Hey guys, this is Gary, and in this video we're going to do a round trip editing session between Photoshop and Lightroom. First we're going to start in Lightroom, and we're going to combine two images. This is one of them, and this image needs some work, so the very first thing, let's just get that out of the way. So the verticals are a little off, so I'm going to go up to the crop tool, and this angle slider, I'm going to double click on the data entry field to the right of it and type in minus 0.57. And if you wonder where I got that number, I've already done this, so I happen to know that's the correct angle. Okay, I'm going to hit done. All right, good. Now, the image is overexposed. I'm going to lower its exposure to roughly 2.5. It doesn't have to be perfect. So minus 2.5 is good. Give it a little tiny bit more contrast. Going to lower the highlights to bring out some of the mid-tone warmth. Brighten the shadows a little bit so I can see inside, the pilings in that pier. I'm going to hold down my Alt key and click on the whites slider and move the whites slider to the right until I can see some pixels show up in that sea of black. Okay, that's good. I don't know if you can see that, but some red pixels are showing up, so I'm going to let go. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and use my black slider, and now the screen turns white. And if I start moving that to the left instead of the right, I see some pixels start to show up in that big sea of white. So once I see that, I'm just going to get a little bit showing up and let go. All right, I've set my white and black point. I'm going to give it a little more clarity, a little more vibrance, and maybe just move the warmth just a little bit to the right. Just a touch. Okay, that's good. All right, so now we're ready to bring in both images. And if I click on the first image that I just edited and hold down the Shift key, that selects them both. Go up to Photo, Edit In, and all the way at the bottom, it says Open as Layers in Photoshop. That's what I would choose. But I'm not going to choose that right now because I've actually already done that. And to save some time, I'm just going to go right into Photoshop, and here's what I got. Now, if you didn't get this, if you're seeing this image instead of this, that's because this image is on the top layer. And all you would simply do is drag that top layer down below the bottom layer. And since we're speaking about layers, let's name these layers. I'm going to name the bottom layer Sky by double-clicking on it. Whoops. Double-clicking on its label, and then double-clicking on the top image. I'm going to call that, I don't know, Pier. Let's call it Pier. Or Ferry. Either way. I'm going to leave it with Pier. Okay, so the top layer is slightly smaller than the bottom layer, so I'm going to go Command or Control T to go to Free Transform. I'm going to hold down my Alt key, which is going to grow the image from the center, hold down my Shift key, which is going to keep the image proportionally accurate as I drag a corner, which I'm going to do. I'm going to drag a corner out until I see that the image goes to the edge of the frame. I'm going to let go with my mouse or stylus, let go with the Alt and Shift key, go up to the options bar and hit the checkbox. Okay, doing good. Now, we need to make a selection of the sky. So I'm going to grab my quick selection tool, make it a little larger, and I'm going to start dragging across, and at some point it's going to jump, and it did. So now I've got pretty much everything over here selected, making sure that I'm in Add to Selection mode. And there's two ways to know. Number one, I see a big plus sign in the middle of my quick selection brush. Up here, it should be in the middle icon, which is the Add to Selection mode. I'm going to simply click, and that grabs this area of the sky. Now I need to zoom in because over here we need to get that. I'm going to hold down my space bar to drag over. I need to hit my left bracket key to make my brush smaller. Click inside this area. Okay. I had to click and paint a little bit. Okay, it's grabbing that section. Good. Now I'm going to click here. It's going to grab that section. And then I'm going to hold down my space bar to drag down and click here. And we're almost done with the selection. There's one more little spot, though, down here. I know I'm being anal, but I'm just going to make my brush a little smaller and paint around in there. and let the quick selection tool figure out the math, and it'll give me a reasonably good selection, which it did. All right, that's great. I'm going to zoom out. So there we go. We've got the entire sky selected, but do we? I don't know how good my edges are because marching ants are not a good way to evaluate that. So I'm going to go to Refine Edge. Okay, so I've selected my view as anything that's selected will show through. Anything that's not selected will be white. I could have selected black. It wouldn't really matter, but white is a better choice here, I think. All right, so I'm going to zoom in, and with my edge detection brush, I'm going to paint along the edges because I want to make sure I get the radar and that apparatus in the middle, and on, just going around here because the quick selection tool did not do a perfect job. See how that works? That's pretty good. Could be better, so I'm just going to paint here one more time, go over that. Okay, it's getting better. I need to paint over here one more time, go over that. Okay, that's pretty good. Over here, it doesn't look very good. I need to fix that, so I'm going to paint over that. All right, we're going to have to fix some of this manually, as I can tell, but I'm going to try one more time to grab that area and see if the edge detection. All right, that's not bad. Now down here where the transition between the sky and the water meets, I need to paint along there and see if we can get that. Well, that's going to take some work. We're going to have to fix that manually. Okay, I'm going to come over here. I see a little area. Paint there. Okay, good. Coming over here, this is probably going to be a manual fix too. Okay, do that. Nah. Well, okay, we're going to have to fix that manually. Dragging over. It's a little weird here, a little sloppy. I'm going to fix that. Okay, so I don't want to waste any more time on this, but I'm going to say that this is good enough because I want to get, I don't want this video to be agonizingly long, which it probably already is. All right, that's good enough. So I'm going to change the output to from selection to layer mask. And when I do that and hit OK, it's going to create that. I need to invert this mask, so I'm going to click on the mask on the peer layer to make sure it's active. And I'm going to go up to Image, Adjustments, Invert, or I could just hit Command I on the Mac, Control I on the PC. Either way, I just inverted the mask. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm going to click on the bottom layer. Grab my move tool by hitting my V key. I'm going to drag down so I can't see that boat in the background there. But that's not good because we have a big space up here, but we can easily fix that. Free transform, Command or Control T. I'm going to hold down the Alt and Shift keys, and I'm going to grab a corner and grow it from the center and leave it proportionally the same. All right, that's pretty good. So I'm going to click checkbox to commit that modification, except it doesn't look realistic, so we need to do a couple things. So I'm going to introduce you to a little more advanced concept. I'm going to grab a brush, okay, the brush tool, and normally this brush is default. Its default state is 100% opacity, but look what happens when I brush on the layer mask. And the way I know I'm going to be painting on the layer mask is it's got that white frame around it, so I know it's active. Over here, the foreground or active color is black, so if I paint here, nothing changes because this area is already black. If I hold down the Alt key to reveal the mask, as you can see, it's already black there. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and click again to bring back the image. Now, we need to hit the X key to make the foreground or active color white. And this time, when I paint with 100% opacity, here's what happens, right? Well, that's no good. That's way too much. It's revealing, because I'm painting with white, it's revealing the yellow sky in this layer. So I'm going to go Command or Control Z to undo that. And I'm going to come up here and change the brush opacity to roughly 10%. Doesn't have to be exact. Well, 16 is a little too much. 12% is fine. I'm going to make my brush a little bigger, and I want to make sure it has a soft edge, which mine happens to have. And if you want to know how to make sure your brush has a soft edge, hardness slider should be at 0, okay? Okay, so now with a 12% opacity, if I start to paint, I'm very, very gently and subtly bringing in some of that warm tone from the yellow sky on this layer. I'm going to make my brush a little bigger, actually a lot bigger, and just kind of keep going. I want to work in some of that warmth, and I'm going to keep going over this area. So can you see what's happening? It's very subtly bringing in warmth from this layer, so I have kind of a smooth transition, which you would expect when the sun's off to the right, which it is. All right, so I'm going to make my brush smaller, and I'm going to keep painting over this side because I want to bring in some warmth. With a 12% opacity, every time I paint over, I bring in another 12% worth of opacity or translucence, as it were, and come over here and paint there. All right, that looks a lot more realistic, right? So we have some warm tone transitioning to cool tone. Make my brush really big and just sort of bring that over. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, we're almost done. Last thing, you would expect this water to be reflecting a blue sky, not a warm tone sky. So we need to fix that. I'm going to introduce you to a new type of layer. It's called an adjustment layer. And down at the bottom, there's this black and white circle. If I click on and hold on that and go choose Huesaturation, I get a brand new layer called Huesaturation. I get a layer mask, which is white, which means everything's going to show through. And up here in my properties panel, I see some stuff here. This is the Huesaturation adjustment. I did an entire video on this, so I'm going to put up a link to that video so you can see it. So I'm not going to go over the Huesaturation adjustment now. I'm just going to click on colorize. You can sort of just follow along even if you don't understand what I'm doing. I'm going to click colorize. I'm going to take the hue slider and move it toward kind of cyanish blue, something along those lines. And now down here, the layer mask is white. We want to basically fill that layer mask with black, right? So if I go up to Edit, Fill, and the content should be black, and the mode should be normal, the opacity should be 100%. If I hit OK, it fills that layer mask with black, concealing the blue overlay tint that we did with the Huesaturation adjustments. So now, with my brush still at 12%, actually I'm going to lower it a little more. I want it to be like 8%. Okay, so now, what I'm going to do, my foreground color is still white. If I start painting here, I'm going to very subtly start revealing the blue saturation, right? And the more I go over it, the bluer it gets. Can you see that, right? So I'm going to very gently alter the water so it starts to reflect more blue. Yeah, look at that, right? That looks much more realistic. So I'm going to keep going here. I want to get some cool tones coming over into the right side as well, just a little bit. So by keeping my opacity at 8%, I gradually bring the blue in. So let me show you what that mask looks like now. Before it was all black. Now if I hold down the Alt key and click on the mask, see that? So I'm revealing, remember white reveals, black conceals. So gray, or in this case a very light gray, reveals, just not at 100%. So it's a very cool way to gradually add whatever is being concealed on a layer or revealed, if you want to start concealing it gradually, by using a brush but lowering its opacity. All right, so I'm going to hold down the Alt key, bring back the image. So there you go, right? That's pretty good. Okay, we're not quite done. We have to do some work to the mask for the pier layer. So here's the mask. Let me just show you this mask. This is where we are with the mask. Okay, we had some problems over here and up here. So we need to fix that. I said we're going to fix it manually, and we are. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to zoom into this area here, and you can see that it's basically translucent. There's some blue sky showing through the wood. All right, so I'm going to go up here. This is called the Polygonal Lasso tool. It's another selection tool. So the way this works, if I click right on this corner up here, I'm going to click, and then see I've got this line now. If I come down here and click, and then go over and click, come back up, click, and then see that little circle that tells me I can complete the shape. When I click there, that turns into marching ants. All right. I didn't do a very good job though. It's not very accurate, right? So I'm taking my right arrow key and just hitting it. I'm gradually moving over that selection. All right. So that's a selection. And again, looking at the mask, see it's gray. We need that to be white. So what would you think we would do? Well, we would fill it with white. Okay, so you can go up to Edit, Fill, and we're going to fill this selection, not with black this time, but with white. And the blending mode is normal. Opacity 100%, hit OK. Bam! Look at that, right? Now, got that wood to be solid again. Okay, so I'm going to deselect. Let's go over to the ferry. Let me zoom out a little bit so we can get there quicker. Holding down the space bar to get my hand tool. Okay, on this side we had some issues. So if I look at the mask, holding down the Alt key, you can see, right? It's a little bit weird. So this time we'll do a little different thing. I'm just going to take a brush, make my brush smaller because it's really large. And as you can see over here, it's still white. So I'm just going to paint white in there. Oh, except it's still 8%. I'm going to make it 100%. And I'm going to paint white in here just to fill that in. You don't have to be super accurate. And then the last thing, we had some problems down here. That's kind of a mess. Okay, so I'm going to take my Shift key to temporarily turn off the mask so we have this line here. Okay, I'm going to grab my Polygonal Lasso tool again. I'm going to click right here, come over, click there, come over, click here, and then click here, and then come down. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to come back around and back up and close the shape. Now I've got a selection. I'm going to hold down my Shift key to reactivate that layer mask. So here's white. I can take a different approach this time. Either way, it's going to work. Opacity 100%. I'm grabbed a brush. I'm going to paint with white. Okay? So we fixed everything. We're done. Okay. Now, last thing, we're going to save this image. Now, look at the name of it. It's got the same name as that name inside of Lightroom. So if I go File, Save, it's going to save that image. Saving, you can see up here it's counting, also down here. When that image is done saving, if I go back to Lightroom, you're going to see that image pop up. And there it is. Now the image, this new edited Photoshop file, has showed up in Lightroom. So we could, if we wanted to, start editing with all of the editing tools in Lightroom, right? Let's say we wanted to sort of mess around with that blue color. So if you go to the HSL area, and then let's say we wanted to shift the hue of this blue. See, I can make the blue more purpley. I can make it more cyanish, which actually maybe I will do. Just a little bit like that. And maybe it's a little too saturated, so I'm going to back off on the saturation of that blue a little bit, right? See? I could go all the way. So the point is, after we're done in Photoshop, we can come back to Lightroom with this new composite image is now subject to all the adjustments and edits that are available in Lightroom. How cool is that? All right. Thus ends this little round trip tutorial. Hope you guys learned something. See you next time.